session where I've invited Mohammed from Pakistan. We have, I don't really remember how we got in contact with each other. I think you reached out to Kvadrat. I was on parental leave, and when I got back, I got this mail from you. You said you were curious about the way of working of Kvadrat, and I had a similar concept. I thought I got curious. We had a first session, digital session, and I was quite astonished of your background, your story, that you actually have created a similar thing as Kvadrat back in Pakistan with the type of environment and possibilities and challenges that comes with that. So I'm gonna leave over to you, Mohammed, in just a few seconds. And just the format, we will have a presentations now for, I don't know, maybe half an hour, 20 minutes, something like that, right? And then
Yeah.
time for discussions and questions. And the purpose of this meeting is just to like get the inspirational or insights from looking at your founder's story and what type of ecosystem or services did you have built over there, and see what type of possible collaboration there is that we can work between each other. So yeah, warm welcome, Mohammed, from it's afternoon in Pakistan at the moment, I know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So thank you for that. My name is Umar. I go by the last name because everybody here is named Muhammad something. So I generally go by my last name. Um, as Isaac mentioned, I lived in Sweden for a while. Graduated 2003 from Linköping. Um, I was very young then. I think I went there when I was 20 something. Assalamu alaikum. Um, from what I remember, it's been many, many years. I guess it's been 20 some years, 23 years. So there's a lot that I don't remember. I remember this street in the picture. Uh, and I remember thinking that it's a small town. The city I live in is called Lahore. It's a city of 25 million people. The city, not the country. It's just the city has a population greater than all of Sweden. So I found it to be very, scarcely populated, not enough people. Like I was not used to being this alone. And then there was a lot of loneliness because of the language barriers and things like that. Um, I graduated from what I think is one of the best universities in Pakistan. And I found my education there in Sweden, the first few semesters I remember were really easy. Like I didn't think I was learning a lot, and it's just very slow. Um, and I thought I wasn't learning much, but I didn't quite, I think I just didn't realize it at that point. And I'll tell you more about it as we go on. But so after the 2 years there doing my master's, I worked for a while and then I decided to come back. Um, and when I got back home to Pakistan, I joined a company which had a US office. And so I was flown all over the world doing IT consulting. I was in the US for a few years and I went to the Far East, the Middle East, and obviously I'd been to the EU. So I got to see a lot of the world in the next 7 years, which I mean, given that I'm from a third world country, this seemed like the dream job, right? You get to travel the world, you get to see things, you get to compare them firsthand. But throughout that process, I felt like something's a little bit off in the way these companies are running, and that I needed to do something differently. Specifically, I felt like the structure of the company that I was working in, and for that matter, all the companies that I interacted with were owned by some people, and the shareholders of those companies are principally the beneficiaries of everything that gets done. And the employees really are not that empowered and are not great beneficiaries of um, uh, the gains of their labor, the fruits of their labor, really. Um, I don't know if that was something that I kind of carried over from the Swedish experience, but it definitely felt that way. And so I started Ally, which was then called Ally, now called TST, in 2009. And so 2009 through current day, we kind of developed this idea of a company that was owned by the employees that worked there. And that was a great place to work for talent, and that the principal objective was an organization that's people oriented, and that's those are the sole beneficiaries of everything that gets done there. My thesis was that that is what is going to yield the best performance output, especially because we're in the professional services industry. It's all about your consultant on that particular day. So I thought this was the right thing to do here. But how it was going to get implemented was a bit of an unknown for me. I looked for books on the topic. There weren't any. I kind of looked back at my youngish experiences from Sweden, and all I remembered was there's a lot of cooperative, you know, forest mills and paper mills, and there's a lot of things that are very cooperatively oriented. And that was something I inspired to do, but the mechanics of it were very complicated, and implementing them in an environment like Pakistan or the US was it presented its own challenges. So I thought I was kind of going at it alone for the most part, and then I met a friend a couple of years ago who still lives in Sweden, and he said, "Hey, everything you're doing sounds exactly like this Swedish company called Kvadrat. You should look them up." And that's what I did. I looked up your website and I thought, hey, this is very similar. And but I wanted to kind of dig in, and so I reached out to Isaac, and then we had a few conversations. And the rest is history. Um, so here's a little bit about us. It's 2007 we got founded. 2010 is when we realized that we were really a cooperative and not what we then referred to as an employee-owned company. We started structuring our governance around the cooperative models. We kind of looked up a lot of the literature on cooperative management, cooperative governance out of Canada and out of Sweden. Even the UK, John Lewis Partnerships, for example, is a very good case study of how these sort of cooperatives can scale and operate. Um, and then recently, we've sort of pivoted ourselves again, and we look towards us more like an accelerator for professional services companies that is still cooperatively run, but that the focus is towards enablement of individuals and startups. We have 5 offices pretty much around the world, but predominantly a lot of our workforce is either Pakistani descendants or based out of Pakistan. So yeah, about 200 members. We have a lot of portfolio companies, sort of in a larger TST brand. There's a lot of sub brands that represent one thing or the other. A lot of that is just technology. We do AI and mobile and integration and all that. But we started doing a lot more general purpose professional services, so things like legal and HR and finance, etc. This is relatively new to us, but our vision right now is to be a platform for enablement of any professional service. Um, Couple of our customers, mostly US centric work is what we do, but we have a Swedish company in there as well, Summit. I don't know if there's this mobile app called Geo Tesic, I think it's called, where you have to guess. Um, you look at a picture and you have to guess where that is on a map. That was an app that we built here in Pakistan for a Swedish company, Summit. Um, so yeah, we kind of work all around the world. Um, so yeah, so we are I think the best way to define ourselves right now is that we are an incubator or an accelerator for professional services entrepreneurs, for professional services startups. And our job's really simple. Like, we want to find people who are really good at what they do and they want to do something of their own. They want to do their own thing. That's the kind of person we are looking for when we're inducting in the company. Um, and then our job is to just remove all the impediments to his growth. And we do that very systematically, very rigorously, very obsessively. Um, so we ask them this question every week in a meeting. We uh, we ask them what it is that is keeping them from growing. And so typically the kind of answers we get are, I'm not super confident about what I'm doing. I got some kind of personal hangups. Maybe I'm risk averse. Maybe I don't have confidence in my communication. Maybe my self-esteem isn't that great, etc., etc. And sometimes they come back and say, hey, no, I get the basics of what I need to do to build a business. But there are pieces missing in there. Sometimes it's about not having enough capital or not understanding how to sell or how to build teams or how to build partnerships, etc. So this is a screenshot of a chart that we have. It kind of explodes to the left of it. But we ask this obsessively. And the job of the platform, the services that we provide are sort of focused on that. I'll go into more details of that in a bit. Um, so we have three basic sets of problems or people that we have. We have people who come in at the idea stage that they have subject matter expertise in an area, and they have the idea of building a team. In which case we have boot camps that we can run them through that walk them through the basics of entrepreneurship. We have playbooks, sort of predefined recipes for building services companies, everything from market research to financial plans, etc. Then there's obviously mentorship with people who have kind of gone ahead of them or they're experts of that particular field in the US or somewhere abroad or even here in Pakistan. And then there's investment. Sometimes they need the money to get going. So the hope is that they take it from the idea to a small team. So 1 to 10% team is what we're trying to get them to in about 6 months to a year. Um, And when they get to that point, that 10% stage, it's all about how can we then now facilitate. The basic concepts are clear. Now it's just about giving them the pieces to expand that engine. So they need things like sales and marketing engines, or for hiring and recruitment and training. They need HR services, or sometimes they just need sort of cross-functional knowledge. Um, a web developer may need a mobile developer, or a mobile developer may need a salesperson to augment himself, and etc., etc. So it's about having access to some of these teams, not necessarily making them part of your team, but just having access to them to be able to collaborate and build together. And then when they're even bigger, around those 10 to 50% mark, the challenges become around structure and governance and management, best practices, and that sort of thing. So we start contributing in that space. Um, but throughout this journey, really, I think the most important thing, and this kind of the first thing we do when people come in, is we ascertain why it is that they're trying to build an organization, or why is it that they want to do what they want to do. Um, so our thesis is that they're all, everybody is just doing it to be a happier, more fulfilled individual. And so this wheel you're looking at comes from our psychologist. It's meant to assess what it is that you're looking for in life in general, not just work, not just TST, but in life in general. And so this talks about the needs that people have. So people have a need for safety. When they have too much safety, they go across the wheel and they're looking for growth. And sometimes they're just looking for solitude and individuality. And when they have too much of it, they're going across the wheel and getting into looking for relationships, etc. And then for each of these quadrants, you can then expand further um, to look at what sort of needs relationships entails, and then what sort of detail that entails. So we go through an exercise where we give them some insight on what they're really looking for in life. Surprisingly, not so obvious for most people. I think we're seeking these things out, but we're very rarely able to articulate what it is that we need. For us, entrepreneurship is not necessarily about enabling somebody to make more money, although that's not something we are against. But we feel like money is a means to an end. Again, I think it's one of those things I picked up from my stay in Sweden, where it's kind of deprioritize the need for growth at all costs and that kind of thing. Um, so I think our success is a fulfilled, happy employee, and I think that's how he's going to serve the customers and the society as a whole best. So we try to be very systematic about it. Um, I'll show you a little bit more detail on the kind of services that we offer or how this flows in our environment. Let me know if you can see my screen. You should be seeing a browser.
Yeah.
So this is a tree kind of built after the services tree that just walks through the various services that we provide. I'll kind of zoom into each of these just to give you a better perspective. Um, so when people come in, they're usually taken through a boot camp, a set of free trainings. We keep some equity in their startup. We walk them through training exercises, through advisory panels. We've modeled this around 500 startups or Y Combinator, if you're familiar with these in the US. So it's a couple of weeks of intense academic training, and then they just go out starting to implement what they're trying to implement. And generally, these are people who are subject matter experts. So we don't need to explain to them how to be a very good technical resource. That's something they are already aware of. So we're just building around that with business gaps and skills. Um, Once that is done, typically the next thing up is some kind of marketing exercise that they want to do. And so we can help them with branding or their online presence or social media or setting up ads or PRs, etc. So they have a basic idea of what they need to do through the boot camps, and now they have a bunch of services that they can start consuming um, to help them actually implement those plans. After marketing is generally about sales. So basic market research, lead gen of all manner and form, really. When these leads are created, then it's about nurturing them, helping close them, and helping manage the accounts as they go throughout the life cycle. And then eventually upselling and cross-selling into the customers. That's something that is helpful for them. Um, Delivery benches, as I mentioned, as you go along the journey, you're always looking for somebody to complement yourself. So there's a whole bunch of community access that is available internally and externally. There are teams that are part of TST that they can reach out to and collaborate, but we're also extend our tentacles into the local community overall and the community in the US to basically give them a network of advisors and partners that's pretty large and pretty diverse for pretty much anything that they may need through that process of building their organization. When they get to about that, more than one person stage, they're now starting to think of building a team. So they start to get into problems around recruitment, whether it's in the US or it's in Pakistan. And then they have a small team. It's about how to evaluate performance and training and sort of the general administrative chores around workforce management. Part of which is wellness, which is a topic close to my heart. So the HR services, the HR department kind of bridges that gap. They don't have to build this themselves. It's available to them as part of the TST platform. Similarly, on the training side, especially in our line of business, there is a lot of outsourcing that gets done. So it's young people that are constantly getting trained. Uh, so the training department kind of does the training need assessments and then their training halls and document libraries and subscriptions, etc., that they can use to train and ramp up quickly. We have a whole LMS that kind of stems from this, which includes some generic content that we've kind of picked up online. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but also specific advice, guidelines, checklists, best practices that come from experienced people ahead of us. Um, Part of the deal is to be contributing back to the community constantly. And then management and governance, as I mentioned, this is one of those things that comes up when you're slightly larger. And throughout, this one's facilities and management. This is like your co-working spaces. I think Quadrat has something similar. Because it's Pakistan, it's a little more complicated. For example, power is not uninterrupted here generally, but we need that for work. So our premises make sure the internet is redundant, the power is redundant, the premises is redundant, etc. So all of those gaps that are needed there, we kind of bridge on the facility side. And throughout this, really, you still need to interact with the government, the institutions. You need to maybe raise some funding. You need some help generating your pitch decks or planning your finances, or you just have the money and you just need to account for it. So you need to file your taxes and your returns and all that. So this, I think, is overall is about 99 services. And the idea is that TST basically just takes care of everything else, and you just do what you do. You do what you do well, and we'll take care of everything else. That's the general idea of it. Now, I don't claim to understand Quadrat completely. I think we've had a couple of very interesting sessions, and I can see similarities. So pardon my ignorance if I am assuming something here. But
No
I think
worries.
at the very root of these, I think it's that philosophy of people first, uh, in empowerment and ownership of employees. Um, I think that's very central because it all kind of stems from that thought process, and then it just manifests in different organizational shapes and forms. But that I think is the key similarity between the two. We don't treat our employees as employees. We don't call them employees. I believe you call them friends. We call them partners. Um, and their fulfillment, their happiness is the central objective here. Um, I remember telling somebody that you're only as good as your consultant on that particular day. And a solution is really just a smart guy owning a problem. And so that's why we have a very direct connection between our partners and uh, clients. And I read the tagline at Quadrat, happy happy consultants make for happy customers. I think that's the loose translation. And that just resonated exactly. Like I said, that's exactly what we think. But I think it all just stems from those cooperative values and the cooperative spirit of things. Um, there are differences, I think, also between the two that I can tell. Um, Kvadrat is set up in Sweden. So, by the way, there is a company called Kvadrat in Denmark. I don't know if you're related, but they
It's
do
actually a
like,
textile company.
yeah, textile, exactly.
They're interested in our .com domain address, actually,
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay, but I mean, so Quadrat is set up in a very less capitalistic, I dare not say socialist, less capitalistic backdrop where an organization like yours is just, it fits into place with the society overall. But for TST, setting it up in the third world, it's a weird novelty. A lot of people come to me and say, like, how did you think of this? And I said, I didn't, I just saw it. Um, and when they experience it, they feel like it's a great idea. They could tell other people about it, but sustaining it here is harder because as a socialist, you pay more in taxes, for example, or to the platform in this case, uh, versus what a capitalistic organization can do. So how do you survive when you're being bombarded with a lot of money being thrown around to problems, to just being the happy place, right? People in a capitalistic country would rather be rich than be happy. Um, and that's a message you really have to work hard to convey here. Not so much when I was there. I think that seemed to be the norm. And I've seen this not just in Pakistan, by the way. I think the US is even more capitalist than we are, and it's even more cutthroat. It's not my cup of tea, but it's definitely the norm there. Um, in terms of services, again, pardon my presumptuousness here, but um, I think Kvadrat is a lot of sort of very cooperative. I saw co-working things. We're going through a joint training here. On our end, we are, I think, a little bit more comprehensive in terms of the broad range of services. It's about 99 services that we offer to the partners. Team mixes, again, from what I understand, Quadrat is a lot of small teams, individuals who want to just join on a platform. For us, it's about 100 of or so are one-man companies, employees. 32 are sort of the startups that have just gotten going. 7 teams are about 10 employees or more, and 2 teams are between 20 and 30 people. So we cater for a range of team sizes, and they all have different problems. They all have different mindsets, and hence have different solutions. So that's something that I think um, at least we struggle with. I hope there are similar things on learning paths. From what I understand, again, there's a lot of tech focus. There's a lot of small team enablement going on. In our case, the charter is a little bit broader in that any professional services, even if it's non-tech, that is something that we feel that we need to be focused on. We've just gotten going on the non-tech side. I think out of the 13, 14 years that we've been doing this, mostly tech, but we feel like the mechanics of building a tech company are very similar to the mechanics of building a finance company or an HR company or a law firm or whatever. Um, so my first picture is black hair, and now it's all gray. Just wanted to share a couple of um, Zen thoughts with you about what I've learned through the years. Um, when I was there in Sweden, I thought I was not learning much, but I didn't realize that even if I wasn't learning much at university, everything around me was a lesson. Um, one story I like to narrate is I was going for an exam. So Linköping, I guess you've all probably been there. It's a small town, pretty much a university town, at least used to be back then. I was going for an exam. I was stressed out. I was riding my bike up and down the hill to my examination hall. Um, and along the way, I saw a lady. She was parked top of the hill, middle of nowhere, and she was picking flowers from the grass next to the road. Um, and I somehow that picture is still embedded in my mind, thinking like that's pretty much all there is to life, right? It's just a simple life. You enjoy your day, you ride your bike up the hill, you pick your flowers, and you go home and you enjoy the moment. And I was freaked out, going to the exam and all of that. Um, you don't think you notice these things, you're just passing them by, but they register. And so whatever ideas you sow in your head, they reap into whatever you've sown in a couple of years. And TST is a classic example of it. These ideas of life in Sweden just manifested differently here, but the basic thought process is the same. The other thing, obviously, that money is not everything. Um, I think it just got very embedded in my mind from my experiences there. Um, a lot of people around me and all my experiences since have been all about money. I mean, as a business manager, that's all you're responsible for. Growth in projects, growth in accounts, growth in customers and company and all of that. I'm not oblivious to it. There is some of that is necessary, but it's important to differentiate that from general happiness. And keeping that central and front and foremost, I think is one of those things I learned from all my experience of thinking I wasn't learning anything. Community mindedness, of course, that's an amazing thing in Sweden, and um, can't miss that. And that, community is stronger together. You may find, again, that you may find this is a kind of a for granted for you, that this is obvious. But if you come to the third world, or even if you go to the US, those are very individualistic societies. And it is not necessarily the case that working together is a good thing. Many times it's the adversarial nature that causes growth. That paradigm is very popular in the US. Um, and that competition can get cutthroat. It can be very bad for the people involved. And that's just, not my cup of tea. Um, Equality matters, in the sense we are all the same. Um, and the story I always love to tell is the first time I landed at Stockholm, I was waiting for my connection downstream. And I didn't know the language. I still don't know the language. But I could see people coming in and going out. So I remember looking at a family, and the kids were acting up, and the parents were not happy, and then the parents, you know, scolded them in Swedish, and the kids corrected themselves. And I didn't know a word of the language, but I could tell what was going on. And I realized that communication is pretty universal, and people are people. Kids will be kids, and parents will be parents. And it doesn't matter that I have never been to this part of the world. It's people are people, you know. And that equality is so prevalent in Sweden, within Sweden. I feel that it matters that people all around the world are treated equally. That's something I still wish for. I think it's something that doesn't exist. But if we are all the same inside, then that's what it should be. That equality should be same all around the world. Even socialist countries, even communist countries, it sort of ends at their boundary. Even their sense of respect ends at their boundary. Like if you look at China, for example, um, there's a lot of equality going on within China. But if you've ever dealt with a Chinese businessman, there's no equality going on there. They're cutthroat, they're very aggressive, and they would rather have your shirt uh, than share any sort of proceeds with you. And then I love this quote about the meaning of life. It's from Picasso. He said, "The meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away." And so TST is sort of my attempt to give back everything I have been privileged to receive from Sweden, from my experiences since. And I hope that it becomes a platform that the next generation and a lot of other entrepreneurs can use to live more happier, more fulfilled lives, and build their businesses and do their thing. Um, we talked about, Isaac and I, some potential opportunities to collaborate amongst the two organizations. I think there are some ideas there in terms of expanding and using each other to improve the shared services that we provide. Um, we can do joint trainings or improve access to capital. Like we have our capital division is based out of the Middle East. There's a lot of money there for ideas and resource arbitrage. Obviously, the larger the pool spread across the world, there are opportunities there in terms of cost saving, etc., for teams. Opportunities to upsell and cross sell. Naturally, we don't do everything under the sun, uh, and we would love to collaborate with the people on your end who are better at something than we are. Um, and so, yeah, at some point, maybe become an extension. I know that Isaac shared um, the title of the meeting is Pakistani version of Kvadrat question mark. I would like to see a day where that's not a question mark anymore, and that we're formally partners and helping each other grow. So that's about it. I just wanted to keep that very brief so you could get a chance to get your questions. If you ever want to reach out to me, there's my email.
Great. Thank you for a great presentation. I will open up for questions, feedback, remarks. Yeah, open up the discussion. I have a couple of remarks myself, but let open up for the audience instead. Any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I was thinking it's not a question, but it's so cool what you've built, Mohammed. Wow, it's so impressive. And it's cool to see all the similarities and all the sheet you showed with all the services. You have really thought it through and like have kind of the blueprint to make a successful business and help others. That's very interesting.
It just kind of happened, to be honest. Like I said, when you plant that seed in there, you don't quite know how many branches it will have or how many um, leaves there'll be and what sort of tree this will be. If it's the right seed, it just ends up becoming what it is. It's, I think kind of just gone with the flow on that. But the basic ideas kind of just came from my experiences there.
How do
Thank
you
you for the
select who to
compliment.
help or who you bring in?
Good question. So we have a pretty comprehensive questionnaire. It's half derived from VCs in Silicon Valley. One of our advisors used to be there for quite some time. And when they would pick a company for investment, that's when they would uh, run them through a 100-question questionnaire, everything from the idea to understanding the depth of their expertise, etc. It's not all relevant to us because we're not that capitalistic, but we've picked up stuff from there. Um, our own experiences, obviously, we've looked at a lot of people over the years, so there's signs we can spot to tell if a person is really good at what they do. Another thing that's important for us is that they stay committed to the idea. Um, our country has a lot of brain drain. I don't know if you know what that means, but a lot of the smartest people will get trained and educated and experienced here, and then they will want to look for opportunities to go and live abroad. Um, and so that's something that we're very, very wary of. We want to pick people who are committed to the idea and that who are just not joining us just for like as a temporary stopgap before they're leaving. So we're looking for people who are committed to change and improving themselves. Um, what else? Yeah, I mean, so we're also looking for people that we can actually help. You know, sometimes they want things that we know we don't have, and we're trying to turn that away. We want to make sure anybody we bring in is bringing in some value or we can add some value to his cause. So it's that sort of a thing. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but roughly speaking, is our selection criteria. We have a in the past we kind of just went through our network and you know word of mouth, and everybody kind of knew about who we were, and the good people kind of started joining. So you'd have somebody who's working in a capitalistic company, and when he hits the end of his growth path, you know, the capitalists don't want to give him any more money. That's when he decides, I'm really good at what I do, why don't I just go do my own thing? And so we would get a lot of those kind of people very organically. uh, but now we've kind of changed that. We are a bit more proactive about advertising ourselves and reaching out to people, going to conferences, etc., to recruit people like this. And then there's a lot more structure in the induction. Now we induct twice a year, and we make sure we pass them through the basic training of a boot camp to give them the best chances of success. Before, it was very collaborative in that you join and then you meet people and then you learn and then you kind of grow as much as you want to grow, because there was never any imposition on how much you wanted to grow. But now, for a few weeks at least, we pass them through an intense curriculum of teaching them the basics of building a business. We feel like if you have that at the back of your mind, there's a lot more you can do with it as you go down your career paths. I think the mechanics of building a business here are different from the mechanics of working in Sweden. I think there you can be an independent consultant or something along those lines and be pretty comfortable about it. Here, you really need a smallish team to have a good quality of life. So people here are much more aggressive in terms of building teams. And as soon as you switch that mindset from me alone to me as a team, a lot of things begin to change downstream of that. Now you need to have a pipeline of work, and you need to have team building problems and team leadership gaps start to show up. Recruitment becomes a challenge, and so on and so forth. Replacements, redundancies, that all that follows. So
Yeah, because your business model is different because, as you said, mechanics in Pakistan is different. So you have like employed consultants, you have freelancing consultants, but you also have the possibility for them to grow their businesses. So they could be like service businesses, like consultancy businesses, but also tech, like startups or product company, such.
exactly.
Right. So there's all. I know that you have a nice figure on your webpage, like the different stages, like from I want to be in this place to I want to have my own company to I want to grow a company, so to speak. So
yeah. We don't force anybody to be at any stage. It's we like to think we lay the rails for the train, but we don't drive the train. They can go as fast or as slow as they want, whatever makes them happy. But when they decide to go, the path is laid down.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Before I step in with my article, someone else who has a comment or question.
Yeah, I had a question. Thanks first for this presentation. It was very interesting to hear. So I thought about like in Kvadrat we have almost exclusively tech and consultants and management consultants. How do you feel about going into other professional services within TST, and how do you think that will affect like the core of the heart of the company or the foundation?
I'll tell you what prompted us to do this, and I think it'll make sense to you. If you look at Magnus as a company, um, what Magnus needs to become a very good company will generally be things that are not technical. So you need a consistent stream of business. So you need salespeople. You need good talent to help and support you. So you need HR. You need somewhere to sit. So you need a good administrative co-working team, etc., etc. So the best company that Magnus can be is really a multifunctional problem. So our thought process is if you can be incentivized, the tech guy can be incentivized to be very good at what he does through this platform, why not the other people? Why can't we have a bunch of sales people trying to build sales companies who can then plug into Magnus's problem, partner up, pair up, be customers, whatever. And so if we have a good ecosystem that is cross-functional, that is in the best interest of everybody involved. Now, the mechanics of building a sales team or a sales company are very different from the mechanics of an IT company. The value is different, the customer base is different. But when you really boil it down, they're both services companies, and professional services, building one or the other is really very, very similar. I'm actually third generation consulting. My granddad was a lawyer, law firm, and then my mother used to do educational consulting. And I'm IT, like, I see a lot of similarity when I talk to them. There's a lot of literature around that will tell you that professional services are very, very similar. So if it's a platform and the different services within that platform complement each other, I think it just makes sense to have a broader vision than just narrow technology.
I agree.
That was the idea. Originally, I think for good 10, 12 years, all we did was tech.
And I mean, like, you didn't call it tech 10, 15 years ago. That was something else. So I mean, like the market needs help. What help is needed changes with time. So I mean, back in the
Yeah.
90s, when Kvadrat was quite young, we had data consultants, so to speak. Now it's IT, or now it's tech consultants. I mean, we have quite large projects running up in the northern part of Sweden, which is connected to green tech and mining and stuff. So I would say maybe mining specialist would be like a profession for Kvadrat up in northern part of Sweden, so to speak. So we try to the mission and vision is still it's similar. It's agnostic. We're not bound to tech or IT, even though it's much simpler to maybe promote or sell or market the idea of Kvadrat when we say we have system developers or we have management consultants or whatever. But I mean, as you said, the profession is we could be in HR, we can be in law or whatever. Doesn't matter, or skills that we don't even know what they are yet, so to speak. I just want to comment. I really liked your the pie chart of happiness, so to speak, the 4 fields. And I remember one of our meetings. You asked me how do you actually measure the happiness of the consultants, and I was like, we have these ENPS surveys and yada yada. And you told me, we have a professional psychologist within the company who actually tries to find KPIs for well-being and happiness. And I thought oh shit, you're way ahead of us in that regard to actually have a data-driven approach regarding this. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah. So when the startups join, they have access to a psychologist, and like I said, he goes through this needs assessment. And then there's a couple of tracks downstream of that. So people have issues with stress. Some people have issues with no drive or motivation. So that's one of those things that he looks at. And when you drill into a lot of these, it's all about understanding the person and the person understanding himself, right? So he does an assessment. Which is the part of it is written questionnaires. There's one test that's like the Rorschach. I don't know if you know that the pictures that you look at and you have to kind of tell what you're seeing. They have their own Rorschach specifically designed for us based on a year of data analysis that we had. So the way that evolved was our first 150 or so consultants, they did not go through these formal boot camps. So they were just here. And so we had seen people growing to be larger, and we had seen people not wanting to grow. And so we hired the psychologist to analyze them and see what differentiates the ones that want to grow to the ones that don't want to grow, to the ones that are happy, to the ones that are not happy. So they've developed what they call as a EEP, an enterprise entrepreneurship platform. And they do an assessment. It's a written assessment. The Rorschach is there, and then they have actual in-person interviews. At the beginning of the program, they get a spreadsheet that says, here are the 15 characteristics that are required to become a successful entrepreneur in the services space. And you're missing A, B, and C. So it's like red, yellow, and green on that. And the first thing is to just convince them of that assessment. People don't like to be told how they are. Once that is clear, then they work with the psychologist throughout the journey for things that they are missing. So if he's missing self-confidence, it could be anything from psychotherapy to diarying and looking at what was causing it, etc. I remember as a young guy came in, he used to do VR, virtual reality, really good at it. He used to build VR games. He'd spent about 2 years building a game. It's super passionate, great guy. But every time we would encourage him to do something of his own, he would just recede and say, no, I'm just looking for a salaried job. I don't think this is for me. And always shying away from anything that causes the minutest amount of stress. So he and the psychologist had a chat. Turned out that the guy had a very overbearing mother in his childhood. Mother would always put him down. And that when he grew up, like all of us, he picked a wife that was exactly like his mother, his overbearing wife. And so he went home and he got a tough time from his wife and his mother. And when he came to the office, he was just out of any sort of ability to take stress. His self-confidence was shot and all that. So the conversations kind of just unearthed this problem. It made him realize that there's something in your surrounding that is triggering this. And so the psychologist then started coaching him about how to put up some barriers and how to cope with some of the stress and how to communicate some of the stresses better, etc. And to be honest, this is something that's widely debated here on how far we should go in fixing people's lives. We are at the end of the day, we're an organization. Like, this is not our agenda, but I personally am of the camp where I think that a completely fulfilled life cannot be disconnected from what's going on at home. So he can fight with his wife, and you can still suffer at work. So you might as well engage on that and help where you can. It should be voluntary. It should be optional for them if they want to engage on that, but at least those resources are available to them. There's sometimes a whole bunch of workshops and that kind of thing that keep happening, which a lot of people, to be honest, are not that keen on. Like, the people don't want generic self-help. They want specific solutions to their current problem. That's what they generally resonate on.
Thank you. Or topics.
Well, I didn't know you had a central perk in Sweden, Agnes.
That's our your office, right, Magnus?
Yes, exactly. I built it exactly like the Friends Cafe. So yeah.
So one question from all of you then. We have a few minutes. What do you feel is missing from what you get at Kvadrat? Sort of stuff you wish you had.
All right, don't be shy.
Everybody's super happy, man.
Yeah. I think for my part, I would like to collaborate more with different professions. I think there's a lot to learn from each other in completely different fields. Like in at least in Sweden in tech, it's pretty well. It's mostly men, mostly white. So it's like a niche. And if you have mixed professions, you have mixed people, you have a lot of greater diversity, and you can learn more from each other, I think.
Sure.
So yeah.
I actually think so I was when I went to university, I was part of what was called the International Students Program. So there's a bunch of people from France and China and Pakistan, and I think there wasn't a lot of diversity in the Swedish student populace. And we were kind of brought in just for that sort of multicultural experience and exposure. So yeah, I found that there's a lot of people in Sweden didn't have as much exposure that as I thought they would have. There's a lot of people are just very used to living where they are, and they're happy living where they are, so that they don't look around. For example, a lot of people cannot differentiate myself from somebody from India or Sri Lanka or pretty much anywhere from Arabia, for example, Arabs. Like, I think people think we're from Arabia or something. We're not, absolutely not like them. And unless they get to interact with them, they just cannot appreciate some of those things. Yeah, so it's always good to know. It's very eye-opening, very, very good for the mind to have that sort of an opening. Absolutely.
Anything else? Yeah.
I think we're good to go.
So, yeah, and I think this was great. I think the recording will be appreciated. I will actually send the recording to our board, like the for the mother company, because I think it's cool and fascinating to see our similarities and differences and try to learn I mean, like if you see the progress bar, like you crawl, you walk, and you run. I mean, we might be walking and running in different aspects that you are just at the beginning of, but I would say you are further down the line in type of services and way of thinking than we are in certain aspects as well. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, Isaac, I'd love to talk to you about that a bit more. As I think the first few conversations were very insightful, and then we took a longish break from summer and all that. I still think there are some ideas I can pick from what you guys are doing. Some of what I've mentioned is very early. You know, the concepts are great, but in terms of execution, we face challenges. Maybe we've gone through them and put to exchange ideas on that and formalize some of these things. I think that'll be great too.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about like retention, so to speak, like when people actually succeed. It's how do you actually keep them within your ecosystem or your services, so to speak.
That, to be honest, is a challenge. There's a couple of things that we do. The latest attempt around that is a formal partnership. So there's obviously legal contracts and all that comes into play. We live in a third world country. Like I said, the law is not that strong here. Enforcement of law is a bit more challenging. So we have to make sure that some of the controls we have for implementation are administrative, which loosely translates into the fact that we need to add enough value that they want to stay engaged throughout the journey, which is a good thing. I guess it's a healthy thing
Absolutely.
to do.
We have the same philosophy actually. So it's very easy to. It's quite hard to get into Kvadrat, but it's quite easy to if you want to be happier somewhere else, like at the clients or start your own company or whatever.
Exactly.
It's quite open doors, so to speak.
Exactly. I think that we talked about last time how this becomes even more challenging as the team sizes grow. So it's harder to retain a 50-person company than it is to retain a 1-person company.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But financially, obviously, that's where we want to take all of them, and that's what runs the platform. The platform is a not-for-profit, by the way. I guess I didn't mention that. We don't keep any money. The partners don't. It's all circulated back into the system for enablement of other entrepreneurs. So it's important for us and our cause to make sure that people still go back and contribute, and they just don't take this for granted. You know, they've been enabled, but they don't want to go enable somebody else. That we want to prevent. I want to make sure this perpetuates. But not everybody's nice, and sometimes we have to not be nice.
Well, I don't know if that's perfect ending, but the time's up. So, thank you thank you very much for fascinating talk and discussion regarding this. Let's keep in contact. Give me a week or two, and we can have a new chat to see what can be done together. And as well as you who has joined, send your thoughts or questions directly to Mohammed Omar or to me if you wanna dribble around regarding the ideas of Pakistani Kvadrat, so to speak.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for today.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.